Jim Duke Radio Network. A rational voice in a world of conspiracy. Jim Duke Perspective.
Well, it's the end of the year. This will be the last show, the last episode of the podcast this year. So we're going to move on to other things next year. But just to summarize this year, some things that were highlighted. And I'm going to mention some things that we don't usually touch on, but things that were popular in the arena of alternative news and conspiracy theories and such, because that's sort of our theme, even though a lot of times I have mentioned that I'm cynical over some of the conclusions that conspiracy theorists come up with lately, not being rational about their conclusions, but just making harsh, hasty statements without actually following through with the motive, as if there's no motive. But in the right-wing political arena, there was an article compiled by Ceylon magazine, whatever that is, a list of the most unhinged conspiracies that have either been, according to them, thoroughly debunked or fall into the category of speculative fiction. One is the January 6th insurrection as an inside job. Of course, they deny that. Trump supporters denied that Trump initiated the insurrection on the White House. This keeps coming up every year since the election. And, you know, there's individuals that are trying to hold Trump accountable for the actions that happened and said that he influenced it. There's a claim that certain individuals in the activist group were actually undercover FBI agents sent to stir up trouble and incite violence. That was the reason it got out of hand. Particular emphasis focused on one rioter named Ray Epps, accused by Tucker Carlson. Now, we mentioned these alternative journalists, but it doesn't necessarily mean we follow them. This is what Tucker Carlson claims, though we have similar suspicions of things that happen. It doesn't mean that we endorse those necessarily that say it, or judge whether they're controlled opposition or not. That's, I'm not going to sit there and point fingers and say, controlled opposition, none of his information's valid. Because they still have points. They just take it on a different narrative. They take it on a controlled narrative. But Trump supporters had embraced the theory to believe that this was a deep state staged event, conspiracy to indict Trump. And the evidence produced by Marjorie Taylor Greene, another person that's in the alternative media, shows surveillance video that an undercover police officer disguised as a Trump supporter fueled the conflict and fueled the theory that it was an inside job. And what she claims in the video to be a law enforcement badge in his hand was actually a vape pen, according to this report. The man was arrested to rest the accusation that he was an agent sent to stir trouble. And other accusations led to other evidences for their connections with the FBI inciting this violence. Yet they insist, since it otherwise shows anguish of Trump supporters. Could it be? We know that there's false flags. It's an MO of politics. We know that they stage violence, they stage acts. And, I even looked into riots from the past that were supposed, like BLM riots. And, you find that open source from George Soros is involved in funding people to be activists. And there's actually open advertisements. Crowds on Demand out of Los Angeles often post Craigslist ads to petition for activists to participate as actors in certain activism and riots and such, and they're paid. They're paid like $25 an hour, and they're even bused to the location. One of these locations were in, I think it was North Carolina at the time. I looked it up. Just before a riot broke out, there were ads for hiring for that area. What would one think? Yeah, these things. But, the claim here was that there was an FBI agent involved and that they stage agents to be activists. Well, they stage CIA agents to do these things, so we can't put that past people. But why would they do it? Are they really against Trump? Is he really a threat? Or is this just to basically keep the paradigm narrative and keep people at odds? Yeah, it's a control mechanism, keeping people divided on each side so that they can control them. So we know politics is usually fixed. Fox News also cited a fake terrorist attack used to vilify Muslims, an attack blamed on Muslims. They connect certain incidences as deliberate Muslim attacks that were not linked. There was a car accident at Rainbow Bridge in Niagara, New York, that was claimed an act of terrorism. And then citing violence at LGBTQRST schools, there was an account, social media, by Chaya Rechik, and I'm probably not saying that right. I don't know who this person is, brought attention to 42 school districts for indoctrinating children into the LGBTQRST, exposing them to sexually explicit content. This caused evacuation of schools due to bomb threats. So basically, it says that this article that we're blaming or putting attention to 42 school districts caused reason for people to act out and attack them, threaten them. It's caused the evacuations due to bomb threats of these attacks, and bomb threats targeted 11 schools pushing LGBT rights and blamed on anti-LGBT narrative as the suspected motive. And this led to Republican legislation with anti-grooming bill accusing opponents of preying on children for the LGBT community. Now, is it true that their schools are indoctrinating children into LGBT, agendas like this person had proposed? And are the bombs linked because of this, due to that article, due to that attention? Now, people act out, but we do know that they are indoctrinating students into the LGBT. We have proof of the drag queen storytelling that a lot of school districts and a lot of libraries, municipal libraries, are promoting drag queen storytelling. Why do they need to make a case for drag queens telling stories? Is this to desensitize? Is this to demoralize? Is this to try to attempt to be woke? There's transgender language that's pushed on students and questions leading children to question their identity so they have freedom to choose their own gender and sexual orientation despite their biological makeup. This is crazy. This is the gay agenda that's pushing demoralization process to weaken the influence of the biblical God. And if you don't think that this is happening, I have a niece that's in the school district who actually was confused when somebody said something about a girl or a boy, and she says, well, is there any difference? We're like, what? And she said, oh, we're taught that there's no difference. We're like, oh, okay. So we had to deprogram her on that because there is a difference. There's a biological difference. There's a role difference. There's description differences, orientation differences, but it's not determined based on opinion, choice. I mean, doesn't fact matter? Doesn't biologics matter anymore? Or are we all basing this on feeling everything's feeling. I feel like a girl or I feel like I'm a boy, so I'm going to re-identify myself as what I want. And then you have this thread of people identifying themselves as cats, meowing, acting like animals and saying, I can identify as a cat. And now there's a whole movement called trans species. Ridiculous. There was a false article, though, going around, a hoax going around saying that all schools are entertaining this and putting kitty litters in school bathrooms and such. Some schools, even around here, were being accused of doing that. And there's no evidence they were. Maybe somebody tossed it around as a possibility, but it was rumored to be this. And I don't know that there are actually any cases of people doing this. If you have any information on that, let me know. But don't send me information that you heard that this school, Michigan school, has kitty litters just because you saw somebody report that on Twitter or something. No, I want real proof. I want I want substantial evidence that they actually did do it, if they did. All right, what about the Etsy trafficking children? Just like the Wayfair years ago, Etsy's been accused because of outrageous pricing on certain products. Downloads of pizza photos led some to suspect them involved in a lot more than just the furniture and the products. They're accused of using the cover of items for promoting child pornography. Well, the claim is that the pizza serves as a code for pedophilia. It came after the pizza parlor in Washington, D.C., known as Pizzagate, and the conspiracy theories around that, where Democrats like John Podesta and Hillary Clinton were aware of harboring child sex slaves, according to the reports, because their emails had really suspicious terminology. People saying they're paying $20,000 for hot dogs and such, and put some extra sauce on that and things like that. And even though this has been denied as like, this is just innocent talk, and yeah, it's possible that they spent $20,000 on hot dogs. Really? Do you know how many packs of hot dogs that would be? Could feed a whole army, a whole country with that. But the thing is that also in the pedophilia rings, we do know that they use coded language. Of course they do. Everybody does. They do in the drug world. They use certain slang words for things so that it's not suspected. And it is kind of suspicious that you would find a rug, a general domestic rug, going for like $20,000, and or an item that's ridiculously high priced, and you can't really bid on it. Only certain demographic can. Kind of leads you to wonder, do they use these as fronts? Well, it's very likely. I wouldn't put it past them. And there is language, even in this community, where there's certain codes, certain symbols used for pedophilia, like that triangle with the inner circle, going inside each other, the lines going inside each other. That's, even the FBI has identified these symbols, and you see these things present, and you wonder, what you see them present in other places, and you say, why? How could you deny that this is really what it is? I mean, it's not used for any other thing, really. But anyway, so QAnon promoted the account on Twitter that posted that it had discovered pizza-related products selling on Etsy for thousands of dollars, asserting that these products were suspicious. Now, again, controlled opposition. Just because QAnon is the one that brought attention to it doesn't mean that it's false, or that by us reporting this because of that source that we're following the controlled narrative. But you can find this in any social media that that people suspected this. It doesn't have to be from QAnon, even if they were the ones that alerted people to it. Just like Alex Jones, you can say all you want about him, but he does alert us to documents that we didn't know were out there that are, against our privacy or against, our citizenship and things like that. Even though his conclusion and his narrative brings you to a different side of it, the fact that he brings attention to the documents gives us ideas of where the documents are that we can look it up. I've done that many times. Looked up the document he brought up. Matter of fact, I downloaded some of them of documents he brought up. That doesn't mean I'm following him. It just means that he alerted to the document. Now he has his own conclusions, and I read the document and I had my own conclusions. But there's many posts on Twitter about these connections that were since removed since there was no legitimate evidence, but a lot of these sites took down those questionable items. Why? If there weren't nothing wrong with them. But we do know that symbolism and all this language is used to in pedophile circles to secretly identify fellow abusers. Now, what about the political scams and cover-ups? There's attempts to link Trump with the January 6th insurrection. I mentioned that before. It became popular. Some say there's proof that he is not swayed by the establishment, but others say there's proof he still does things that are controlled. But they say that this makes him a legitimate candidate, the fact that people are going after him. But conspiracy theorists are still questioning Trump's integrity to cause and suspect the attention is possibly smoke and mirrors to throw us off and give us false credibility to the candidate, give him more attention. However, he was arrested for hush money bribes, forgery, and racketeering charges, accusing him of criminal organizations who knowingly and willfully joined a conspiracy to unlawfully change the outcome of the election. So there's criminal investigations still open for this and his influence on January 6th, and other probes are looking into the classified documents he held. It leads people to believe if it's it's muddy accusations that just are a witch hunt. One proponent calling for his arrest is Rob Reiner. You remember Meathead on All in the Family? He also called for Trump's arrest even before he had anything on Trump. He just hates him. These people are brainwashed. They're biased. They're drinking the Kool-Aid. But at the same time, Biden's found holding similar documents, questionable documents, and yet he's excused by political liberal advocates. It's just a circle. His son, Hunter Biden, is under accusations circulating that he had illegal foreign dealings, and, they got him on indictments related to tax crimes in California for unpaid taxes that he's since already paid. So this is all basically just give and take political antics. Politics, as we know, is a paradigm perception to give the public to take sides. When we show support, our tendencies are more likely predictable of who we choose. That's why it's a barometer. It serves as a barometer of what people will tolerate as the main influential players, usually on both sides, are puppets. They're being directed through bribes, promises, and threats, easily controlled to sway either party towards the global agenda of the New World Order. It's just a matter of how obvious it is. Of course, Democrats can do it more obvious because they're known for being globalists and socialists. Even though they don't admit they're socialists, they do socialist things. So, and then we have the political accusations of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's called a misinformation campaign. A Democrat who announced a bid for presidency for 2024 He took a stance against vaccines, accusing the vaccine industry is the only medical product that is not safely tested prior to licensing. Now, debunkers claim that this is not true. All vaccines undergo safety testing prior to authorization of approval. That's the montage that they keep mimicking. Yet, they just mimic a phrase. There's no testing, evidence that they have done proper testing to prove that it was absolutely, legitimately safe, and that it passed without a doubt to state that there's no harm. They just basically squash the adverse effects. And they're covered up calling them adverse events so that you can't find them easily as harm. But they basically cover up their inability to prove how safe they are by a bunch of political activism. So our RFK claims vaccines are linked to autism. They say there's no proof to connect that. Well, we got to prove both sides. We got to prove that there is if we're claiming it is. And they say that according to the information that he has, he shows that there's links that since the rise of vaccines, autism increases. Is that just coincidence? So this guy was he's accused of misinformation regarding COVID as deliberate ethnic targeting of certain demographics, bypassing Chinese and Ashkenazi Jews who are the most immune to the illness. And because of his advocacy of ivermectin and hydrochloroquine as effective treatments, it's denied by the public narrative as not effective and it's not substantially determined as a benefit. But yet they claim without a doubt that COVID vaccines is actually absolutely effective, even though there's much stats that show it's not. And it's promoted as safe and effective, even though the symptoms has linked to other diseases and records associated with the vaccine are squashed to prevent any suspicions. They control the narrative, folks. The media does. And it's also denied that the claim that vaccinated athletes die mysteriously from the jab. Experts in sports medicines tell us that there's no link as an increase of sudden death or cardiac injury among U.S. athletes since COVID-19 vaccines became available. Their claim is that they're accusing that the claim that the prior to 2020 vaccines, there was no sudden deaths, people dropping suddenly, mysteriously. They're denying that was a thing. And others are saying it's become more frequent. And the rebuttal is that this is a false claim because athletes died before this. See, that's what they're doing. They take a fact and they just say athletes always died before this. They didn't just die because of this, these last couple of years. But yet they fail to realize the link and the connection that people are mysteriously dropping. And then in other news, we had the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th that caused great concern that Israel created their own false flag, so they had legitimacy to attack Palestine. And even if there were attacks, legitimate attacks from Hamas, rogue Hamas agents, they're saying the debate is whether Israel had legitimacy to attack the way they did, because Hamas is claiming that Israel is is also a terrorist organization, but Hamas is an Israeli-created organization. It has suspicions by both. There were a controlled Israeli military group. We have accounts from personnel that inform that leaders Israeli leaders gave stand-down orders when attacked, when it first occurred, letting it almost flourish a little bit. And, of course, this was excused as being careful not to target innocent victims, innocent individuals. But then the Israeli military went out and killed anything in sight, and they leveled everything, including hospitals, according to reports from Palestine. Now, they say those reports are propaganda just as much as people say it's propaganda that they had legitimate cause to attack. Everything's propaganda. It was supported by Hamas propaganda footage showing children killed, but denied by Israeli propaganda that spun it to say that it was staged. Who do you believe? The question of doubt still leaves open which propaganda you're following. And, we do know propaganda works to support confirmations and get compliance from people, from the citizens. But Israel is also known, I know people in military, and they said Israel is known, they don't ask questions. They don't go in and try to separate the innocent from the enemy. They go in, and if the enemy's amongst them, they'll take out everything. How come that isn't publicized? That's denied by Israel. But I know people in military that says this is absolutely true. They do attack hospitals or whatever they need to get the enemy. They don't care. They're not as hospitable as we are, being nice about it and but they did give warnings supposedly to leave, but flee, and we're not going to help you go anyplace. We're just telling you to flee. Social media questioned whether the attacks even really happened. Several from the region didn't see as major an activity justifying Israel going after Palestine has been reported. So they're suspecting false flags to legitimize Israel for retaliating. And one last story. Speaking of Alex Jones earlier, Elon Musk reinstated Alex Jones, encouraging people to follow him. Alternative or mainstream, I call alternative conspiracy journalism as almost alternative mainstream conservative, because they're outside the box. They're inside the box still. They're not outside the box like we are. We're totally independent, where they're still controlling a narrative, even if they're alternative. But a mainstream alternative conspiracy journalist, Alex Jones, was reinstated on the social platform after being banned for his push that Sandy Hook was a fake event and that no one died. Musk had been encouraging followers by pushing who to follow suggestions in people's profiles of Alex Jones, giving him a major platform, even after the lawsuit that Jones falsely accused Sandy Hook as not legitimate, and now he has to pay Sandy Hook victims. So I'm not going to take a side to that one because I don't want to be part of a lawsuit. I don't have millions to give, so I'll leave that one be. But there's a lot more conspiracies that came up over the year, and we've reported several. These sort of come up. They're the same types of things, the same terrorist activities, the same accusations against pedophiles. And, every year we hear the same threats of the economy crashing, the grid going down, an EMF every year. How long are we going to keep hearing it until it happens and people going, see, finally, we were right. You weren't right in 2012 when you said it. You weren't right in 2013 when you said it. You weren't right when you said in 2015 or 2016 the military were clamping down and doing exercises to take away our freedom then and throw us in jail and throw us in camps. I don't doubt they're setting things up to possibly do things like that. I don't doubt that surveillance can lead them to interrogate dissidents, those that are against government. But I do doubt the date planning that this is happening like now. This is going to happen this year. This is going to happen every year in summer. This is going to happen. And every year in spring, this is going to happen. And you got to stop crying the sky is falling Just report the fact of the potential and leave it be, because we don't know if or when it's going to happen. Every year, just putting up the fear monger tactics, all you're doing is basically trying to get more people to listen to you, more people urgently fearful, and because it sells. And because I failed to sell this stuff, because I failed to legitimately be a watchman, like they say, you're a watchman if you're warning of these things. Oh, yeah? Are you really that responsible if you're haphazardly throwing this stuff out without evidence behind it, without actually showing the proof of progression? You're just stating it and making people fearful. Is that really responsible? No, many people are being negligent, and I failed to do that. And that's why I think I'm losing a lot of support, a lot of hits. I went from thousands, and it's not a lot, believe me, by the whole scheme of things, like, 20,000 hits for one person is a lot, and another person, it's not a lot. I don't get that many hits on each episode. I only get thousands. I was getting thousands. Now I'm getting hundreds. The records show, the stats show that I've dropped nearly 70%. And my co-host thinks it's because I fail to entertain things like Bigfoot and flat Earth and cloning and things like that. I say it's just maybe the boredom that people have with these topics, maybe the boredom they have with my presentation, my show, and it's basically caused disinterest. I think it's showing, according to the numbers, that there's not a lot of listeners hanging in there. So I don't know how long I'm going on with this, because I'm not going to end up doing it for 10 people. It's a lot of work. I spend hours doing this. I spend thousands of dollars putting out the website, troubleshooting it, buying hosting time, and doing all this thing. Why? Out of my own money? Why? So that I can speak to 10 people? If that was the case, I'll invite you all in my bedroom, or my bedroom. That's kind of personal, isn't it? My living room, and we'll just basically chat there. And then I don't have to pay anything. But unless my numbers go up, and I'm not saying I do this for the numbers. See, there's a thing people say, I'm not doing it for the numbers, but then they cry because the numbers aren't up. What it is I'm not doing it to try to gain publicity of numbers, but I would like to see the numbers showing that people are interested, or that people care, or that people are sharing it. Otherwise, why am I doing it? If I'm doing it just for my own sake, I can talk to my dog. I don't have a dog. Maybe I should get one so I can talk to something, because my wife doesn't want to hear it. She said I should put out a podcast, Nobody Listens to Jim. That would be a better thing. Maybe I'll do that. Oh, I should say, before we close, I would appreciate it if you did like this stuff on social media, if you did share this stuff with your friends, and if you do rate it on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, and listen on any of your favorite podcasts. I do have a Patreon page I have out there just in case people do feel it worthy to donate something so we could keep it going. I was putting out this with my own money, but it does get tedious, like if nobody's listening. So I'd like to know people are out there. But, support the artists. Come on, there's nothing wrong with that. People say, oh, you're peddling foods, you're peddling products, you're peddling solicitations. Just leave it open if you are willing. All right, God bless. We'll see you around the turn of the year and into the next year for the first show. We'll probably just do another light one on that show just to get the year rolling. And we'll see you next time. God bless.